30 miles out or 30 minutes out, something like that. And same orders? And the vice president said, yeah, same orders. And he came back 2 times. Another time to say, only 10 miles out, or 10 minutes out, I forget which. Same orders? Yes. Now it's just 5 minutes out. Yes, same orders. And did I tell you different orders? 5 minutes later, something plows into the Pentagon, okay? Now, whether it was a plane or a missile, that's what happened. And Mineta testified, that's what happened. And so the fact that that wasn't in the 9/11 Commission report was rather odd, don't you think? Yeah. Who was that young man? Did anybody ask who that young man was? So there was a reading of the U.S. Constitution at Georgetown University. I was one of the ones who was privileged to read a couple of the amendments, and Mineta read a couple of the amendments after I did. And when I watched him do that, I said, you know, maybe I ought to try to intercept him. And there was the same thing, you know. Should I not? Well, Cindy Sheehan wouldn't have any problem. What kind of whistle are you going to go? So I go down to the 2nd floor, and here he comes out with his little escort, you know, a college girl. And I said, no, Secretary Mineta, it's so good to see you. You know, he's a politician. And I said, I'm Ray McGovern. Oh, yes, Ray. Yeah, how are you? You know, so he doesn't know me from Adam, see? So then I said, you know, Secretary Mineta, some of these, you know, these all kinds of theories going around about what went on in the bunker there. And we know your testimony. How do you explain what was going on? Who was that man that kept coming in? Did he have a uniform on? No, he was a civilian. I said, well, how do you figure, you know, what happened there? He says, well, that plane in Pennsylvania, you know. I said, no, that was an hour later, the secretary. You already testified. This had to do with the one that hit the Pentagon. And so how do you, so, well, you know, that plane in Pennsylvania, we never figured. I said, no, it's not Pennsylvania. So either he's getting a little, I don't know, some senility in there, or maybe he's just, you know, real clever and keeping his mouth shut about that. But for 8 minutes of interrogation without any waterboarding or anything like that, I couldn't get anything out of him. And next thing I know, I'm landing in San Jose, California at the Norm Mineta Airport. And so I guess if you keep your mouth shut, they'll name an airport after you.
Well, he did resign.
Well, I think that the 9/11 Truth Movement is something to be applauded. That the reason that it's so necessary is that there are so many unanswered questions. And those questions are unanswered because this administration won't answer them. I mean, it's that simple, okay? Now, if they come through with the answers, there wouldn't be all these theories, but they don't, okay? Now why don't they? Well, they have something to cover up, and the 9/11 Commission, of course, was a master cover-up. We know that. I mean, I can't believe Hamilton and Kane saying, oh, gosh, why didn't they tell us that George Tenet sort of took Condoleezza Rice on the 10th of July and said, you got to do something about this planes, you know? Why didn't they tell us? You know, there's a lot they didn't tell us. Gosh, you know? Well, give me a break, you know? So the 9/11 Commission was a cover-up. The question is what it was covering up. The charitable explanation is gross negligence, malfeasance, misfeasance, and what you call it, okay? Whether it was something more sinister, you know, am I prepared to believe that Dick Cheney would be capable of knowing about this kind of attack on the Pentagon, for example, and allowing it to happen? Well, from what I know about Dick Cheney, yeah, I'd be all too ready to believe that. If he can torture people and all that kind of stuff, you know, if he could publicly appeal for the right to torture, then he's probably capable of that. But I'm first and foremost an intelligence professional. I have to stick to the evidence as it pertains here, and I have to be careful not to let this kind of impression or my emotional reaction to this color my thinking on these facts. And I just haven't had the time that my good friend David Ray Griffin has had to look into this. I applaud his work. I think it stands up to close scrutiny. I'm just not there yet because I haven't had a chance to explore the evidence myself. And for many of the theories that are adduced, not only by David Ray Griffin, but others, sometimes there are still more questions that come up that are unanswered. And so I can't let myself be guilty of what I accuse others of, that is cherry-picking the evidence. And so that's where I am. It's not a real comfortable position to be in. I ask people to understand that. I think in the next couple of months I may have a chance to have some time to read more about it and look at some of these tapes that people have given me, and I just haven't had time to look at. Well, I would say this, that there's one big elephant in the living room. It's never asked about, and people don't like to put it on any video or anything like that, but it is the relationship between the United States of America and the State of Israel. It's the fly in the ointment. It's gotten us into a peck of trouble in the Middle East. It's got historical antecedents. It's all kind of, you can parse it, but this president, almost 6 years ago, reversed a constant policy over 4 decades whereby we tried to be an honest broker, where we tried to be an intermediary to try to get some rights for the Palestinians while securing the existence of Israel within secure and internationally recognized borders. He reversed that. At the very first NSC meeting, we know this because the Secretary of the Treasury, Paul O'Neill, was there, and he wrote it in his book. And what the president said is, first thing he said, okay, we know who our friends are in the Middle East. No more of this honest broker stuff. We're going to give Ariel Sharon his head. Anybody know Ariel Sharon? And Powell raised his hand. Yeah, I know him. Well, we're just going to, what do you think? And Powell says, well, I think that might be dangerous to unleash Ariel Sharon. He said, well, the president says, well, sometimes a show of force can be a good thing. You know, we'll see what happens. Well, we've seen what happened, right? Last 6 years, we've seen what happened. And so he reversed that policy, and the sooner we get back to a policy where we recognize that the Palestinians also have a right to exist, as soon as our politicians can get bold enough to say, look, this is a justice issue. You can't have peace without justice. I mean, you can go back to the Bible for that, because that's biblical, right? Peace is simply the experience of justice in biblical terms. And that's true today as it was back then. So we have to do a little bit more justice, or a lot more. And once we do that, once we grapple with this very knotty problem and show that we're willing to recognize the rights of the Palestinians as well as the Israelis and not just give lip service to them, then there's some hope for a movement in the Middle East, and there's some hope that we could address the other grievances that Palestinians and other Muslims and Arabs feel against our policies, because it's not that they hate our freedom, it's not that they hate our democracy, they hate our policies. And, you know, when Don Rumsfeld said, as he did, you know, I just, can't figure out these people. Why would anybody strap a plastique around his belt and blow himself up just to kill other people? You don't understand that. Well, all he needs to do is look at Al Jazeera one night, okay? And what will he see? He'll see helicopter gunships, he'll see fighter bombers, he'll see tanks, he'll see bulldozers made in Peoria, all made in America, wreaking havoc on the West Bank and now again in Gaza. That's what they see. And there are 1.3 billion Muslims out there, and they're not going to let us do that much longer, and they're certainly not going to let us prevail in Iraq. So as soon as they kind of recognize that, as soon as that you realize that to defeat terrorism, okay, it's exactly the way you defeat malaria. Now with malaria, you follow the mosquitoes back to where they breed, right? Okay, and then when you find the swamp, then you set up sharpshooters around the swamp and you try to shoot all the mosquitoes as they leave the swamp, right? Not right, okay? And so it is with terrorism. You find out what swamp breeds these grievances, and you don't try to shoot all the terrorists as they come out of the swamp. You drain the swamp. To drain the swamp of the legitimate grievances that the Arabs, the Muslims, the Palestinians feel. And once that's done, and once we show some reasonable respect and intention to do that, then we can, and only then will we have some real movement in the Middle East and people take us seriously, that we really are a justice people.
All right, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Awesome. That was so good.